They didn't have iron or wheels or even horses, but they built cities so vast they rivaled the power of Rome, and so expertly hidden that we didn't even know they existed until lasers from space traced their outlines through the trees. Beneath the tangled roots of the rainforest, across the dry coastal deserts, and along mountain ridges thousands of feet above sea level, lie the remains of civilizations that reimagined what a city could be. They shaped their landscapes with suspended highways, mountaintop strongholds, floating gardens, and observatories carved in stone, crafted not with steel or beasts of burden, but with vision, precision, and deep cultural meaning. These weren't temporary settlements. They were urban worlds, engineered to last, mapped to the heavens and rooted in the land. So why were they forgotten? And what are we still failing to understand? This is Armchair Archaeology. Stay with us, because by the end of this episode, we'll reveal a city so vast it stayed hidden in plain sight until just a few years ago, and its discovery rewrites the story of the Americas. If this glimpse into lost civilizations excites you, make sure to subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. It's the best way to stay connected as we unearth the forgotten past, one hidden city at a time. For generations, the Americas before European contact were seen as largely empty, inhabited by scattered tribes, without cities, roads, or monuments of lasting value. This myth wasn't just misleading, it was profoundly wrong. What lay buried beneath jungle vines, desert sands, and mountain mist were vast urban worlds that rivaled any in Europe or Asia. To understand how these cities could vanish from view, we have to look at what obscured them. Forest growth, colonial rewriting of history, and sheer scale. One of the earliest rediscoveries was Teotihuacan, a metropolis in central Mexico that had already been abandoned for centuries when the Aztecs encountered it. Struck by its immense pyramids and perfectly aligned streets, they believed it had been built by gods, not humans. Even they didn't know who had constructed it. Further south, the mighty city of Tikal was swallowed by rainforest. When Spanish missionaries passed through the region, they described the landscape as wild and uninhabited, unaware that stone towers and royal plazas lay just beyond their view, disguised as hills by centuries of growth. High in the Andes, Machu Picchu escaped the Spanish conquest altogether. Locals never lost knowledge of it, but it wasn't until the early 20th century that outsiders realized what lay nestled on the mountaintop. Its intact walls and ceremonial pathways sparked global fascination and rewrote history textbooks overnight. These places didn't vanish. They were gradually overtaken by nature, abandoned due to drought, conflict, or political collapse, and later buried by colonial narratives that downplayed indigenous achievement. What we're now uncovering is a different story entirely, of cities teeming with life, of networks that connected mountain to coast, and of builders who shaped their worlds with a sophistication that demands recognition. The past was never lost. It was overwritten, and now, at last, it's being restored to memory. The lowland jungles of Mesoamerica are thick with silence, monkeys calling through the canopy, the rustle of wind through leaves. But beneath the trees, the ground tells a different story. What once looked like wilderness is now being revealed as a vast human landscape, long concealed by the very forest that preserved it. For much of the 20th century, archaeologists believed the Maya built small ceremonial centers surrounded by scattered farms. But that view collapsed when a new tool, LiDAR, began peeling back the jungle's cover. By firing laser pulses from aircraft and measuring the bounce back, researchers can now map what lies beneath the vegetation with stunning clarity. Suddenly, the jungle stopped being an obstacle and became a lens through which a hidden world came into focus. In northern Guatemala, LiDAR scans uncovered thousands of previously unknown structures, roads, reservoirs, city walls, and pyramids stretching for miles in every direction. What had seemed like isolated temples were actually part of sprawling, interconnected cities. One of the most eye-opening discoveries came at El Mirador, once thought to be a minor site. LiDAR revealed not only its size, but the extent of its planning. Elevated causeways, residential clusters, and massive ceremonial spaces. At its center rises La Danta, a pyramid so immense that by volume it rivals or exceeds Egypt's Great Pyramid, not in height, but in sheer mass. The jungle hadn't destroyed these cities. It had shielded them. Roots wrapped around temples like protective vines. Soil piled over streets that once echoed with footsteps. What seemed like emptiness was dense with history, only waiting to be seen from above. Have you ever visited an archaeological site or read about a lost civilization that amazed you? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear what ancient wonders fascinate you most. Thanks to LiDAR, the forest is being reinterpreted, not as untouched nature, but as a memory map of a world that was once filled with stone, light, ritual, and life. For generations, archaeologists could only guess at the true scale of ancient American cities. Dense forests, overgrown ruins, and sheer distance made it nearly impossible to see the bigger picture. Explorers hacked their way through vegetation, mapping temples one by one. But now, with new technology, the jungle is yielding its secrets faster than anyone imagined. LiDAR, light detection and ranging, has revolutionized archaeology. From planes or drones, it shoots laser pulses that pierce through foliage to create detailed 3D models of the ground below. What emerges is the invisible landscape. Terraces, causeways, plazas, and pyramids long swallowed by the forest. In 2018, LiDAR scans over northern Guatemala revealed something extraordinary. Over 60,000 previously undocumented structures, including homes, ceremonial platforms, defensive walls, and wide causeways that connected settlements over miles of jungle. It was a paradigm shift, an urban map hiding in plain sight, rewriting centuries of assumptions with a few laser pulses. These weren't isolated cities. They were nodes in a vast, interconnected urban web. The discovery forced a dramatic revision of Maya population estimates. Once thought to be a scattered society of city-states, the Maya lowlands are now seen as hosting millions of people supported by advanced infrastructure, agriculture, and regional planning. Further north in Mexico, LiDAR uncovered Aguada Phoenix, a massive platform over 1,400 meters long, built more than 3,000 years ago and completely invisible from the ground. For decades, it had been mistaken for a natural rise in the land. These revelations aren't coming from excavation. They're coming from elevation. Archaeology is becoming digital, data-driven, and panoramic. The forest no longer hides the past. It frames it. And with every scan, we redraw the map of the ancient Americas, not just adding dots, but uncovering civilizations of astonishing scale, purpose, and permanence. In ancient America, the natural world wasn't something to be conquered. It was something to be negotiated with, even reshaped. The cities that emerged across deserts, mountaintops, and rainforests weren't built in spite of these landscapes. They were built because of them. On Peru's northern coast, where rain is nearly non-existent, the Chimu built Chan Chan, the largest adobe city in the world. Its layout cleverly channeled cool ocean breezes through high walls to reduce heat. Sunken gardens, reservoirs, and a web of canals fed crops and drinking water into a city of over 30,000 people. In one of Earth's driest climates, they created an urban oasis from mud and math. From deserts to cloud-covered mountains, Ancient engineers didn't just survive, they thrived. In the Andes, the builders of Tiwanaku raised their city nearly 13,000 feet above sea level. They didn't flatten the land, they adapted to it. Canals directed glacial melt into the city and irrigated its famous suca colos, or raised fields. These platforms trapped heat during the day and released it at night, protecting crops from frost. A sustainable solution centuries ahead of modern climate-resilient agriculture. In the Maya lowlands, seasonal flooding forced cities like Aguateca to be built on high ridges, with engineered causeways that remained passable during rains. Fortified walls followed the natural topography, using cliffs and escarpments as barriers. Across regions, city orientation was more than just functional. It was strategic. Defensive positioning, access to water, and sacred geography were all factored into where and how a city would rise. These were not random settlements. They were the result of long-term observation, generational knowledge, and a worldview that saw the environment not as a limit, but as a collaborator in the act of building civilization. If you're enjoying this journey and want to support more in-depth explorations like this, consider leaving a super thanks. Every bit helps us keep the flame of curiosity burning bright. Not all cities are built with bricks and logic alone. For many ancient American cultures, city planning was a sacred act, one that mirrored the structure of the universe and gave physical form to spiritual belief. Every plaza, temple, and roadway was carefully placed, aligned not just with geography, but with gods, seasons, and stars. In Teotihuacan, the city's main axis, known as the Avenue of the Dead, is aligned roughly 15 degrees off true north. Scholars believe this wasn't a mistake, but a deliberate orientation connected to astronomical events and mountain peaks on the horizon. The massive Pyramid of the Sun rises along this line, mirroring the path of the cosmos and anchoring the city in both space and myth. At Monte Alban, the builders flattened a mountaintop and positioned temples to mark solar events. Some structures align with the solstices, others with celestial bodies central to Zapotec religion. The city became a map of the sky, where ritual, rulership, and cosmology played out in stone. Ritual wasn't a layer added onto architecture, it was the blueprint itself. Perhaps no example is more visually powerful than El Castillo at Chichén Itzá. Built by the Maya, its staircase is flanked by sculpted serpent heads. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts shadows down the pyramid's edges, creating the illusion of a serpent slithering to earth. This wasn't an accident of light, it was architecture designed to perform myth. City plans often encoded duality, north and south, rain and sun, life and death. Tenochtitlan's twin temples honored two gods, Tlaloc, the rain-bringer, and Huitzilopochtli, the god of war. Their duality represented balance, and the city's structure reinforced it in daily life. Urban space was more than infrastructure, it was ritual space. In these cities, to walk through the streets was to move through a living mythos, where architecture served as both observatory and oracle. If you're intrigued by how ancient cities merged spirituality with science, check out our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. It dives deeper into the mysteries and technologies of lost civilizations, from sacred geometry to mythic alignments. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. Building monumental infrastructure without metal tools, wheels, or draft animals sounds impossible by modern standards. But across the ancient Americas, engineers did exactly that, laying down thousands of miles of roads, raising cities in swamps and mountaintops, and shaping stone with a level of precision still admired today. The Inca road system, known as the Capacan, connected over 24,000 miles of territory across 6 modern countries. These roads crossed glaciers, deserts, and deep canyons, using rope bridges, switchbacks, and carved staircases to navigate terrain no wheeled cart could cross. Supplies moved on foot or by llama, but the system functioned with stunning efficiency, linking far-flung provinces to the imperial heart at Cusco. In the Maya lowlands, where rivers were scarce, water systems were critical. Engineers built canals, stone aqueducts, and chultuns, underground cisterns for storing rainwater during the dry season. At Palenque, water pressure was used to feed fountains, an innovation not seen again in the Western Hemisphere for centuries. In central Mexico, the Aztecs transformed the island city of Tenochtitlan into a hydraulic marvel. Causeways and dikes controlled lake levels, while floating gardens called chinampas turned water into farmland. Even during floods, the city functioned smoothly. High in the Andes, the stonemasons of Sacsayhuaman constructed walls using boulders as large as 125 tons, fitted so precisely with no mortar that even today, in an earthquake-prone region, they remain firmly locked in place. The shapes weren't uniform. Stones were sculpted like puzzle pieces, fitted through skill and experience alone. None of this was guesswork. These were systems based on long-term observation and refined experimentation. Even without iron, these builders developed resilient, durable infrastructure, often more enduring than what we build with modern materials today. They didn't need steel to build cities. Across ancient America, engineers and artisans developed a toolkit perfectly matched to their environment, made of stone, heat, water, and generations of knowledge passed down by hand. One of the most extraordinary materials was obsidian, a natural volcanic glass. When fractured properly, it creates edges sharper than modern surgical scalpels. Obsidian blades were used for everything, from ritual offerings to fine craftsmanship and surgery. This wasn't a crude workaround. It was a material as precise and deadly as any metal. And it wasn't the only one. Rope, wood, water, and heat became tools in a system that prized precision over brute force. To shape massive stone blocks, builders relied on thermal shock. Fire was used to heat boulders, and then cold water was poured on them to cause controlled fracturing. Harder stones like diorite and sandstone were then used to grind surfaces smooth. This wasn't improvisation. They were deliberate methods refined over centuries. At Ollantaytambo, andesite blocks weighing up to 50 tons were quarried, dragged across rivers, and hauled up steep ridges using nothing more than ropes, sleds, levers, and teamwork. Precision didn't come from machines. It came from patience and technique. Stonemasons used simple tools with surgical focus. Wooden plumb lines and water levels helped ensure symmetry. At Sacsayhuaman, stone blocks, some over 100 tons, were shaped like irregular puzzle pieces to fit together with incredible precision, without mortar. The result? Earthquake-resistant walls that have survived for centuries with barely a crack. These technologies weren't primitive. They were practical, elegant, and deeply embedded in cultural practice. Innovation didn't depend on metallurgy. It depended on knowing your materials, your environment, and your limits. What they created with that knowledge continues to baffle modern engineers and inspire new ways of thinking about low-tech ingenuity. And if ancient innovation fascinates you, Secrets of the Ancient World covers even more, from forgotten medical techniques to engineering that still stumps experts today. Links in the pinned comment below. Few empires embraced elevation like the Inca. Where others built on flat plains or river valleys, the Inca shaped their civilization among the clouds. Across the Andes, their cities rose from cliff edges, high plateaus, and ridgelines, strategically placed not just for defense, but for alignment with sacred geography and control over resources. Cusco, the imperial capital sat over 11,000 feet above sea level. Designed in the shape of a puma, it functioned as both a political center and a symbolic map. From Cusco, roads radiated outward, linking the empire from Ecuador to Chile. The city's temples and plazas aligned with solstices and sacred mountains, anchoring the capital in both myth and topography. Farther into the mountains, Machu Picchu reveals how seamlessly the Inca integrated architecture with nature. Terraced slopes reduced erosion and expanded farmland, while a sophisticated water system used gravity to feed fountains and ceremonial baths. Built along a fault line, the site was carefully designed to withstand seismic activity. Even today, its walls remain intact with no mortar, stones locked together with calculated flexibility. It's not just impressive, it's instructive. These techniques hold lessons for how we build in unstable terrains even now. But the most powerful display of stone engineering remains at Sacsayhuaman, overlooking Cusco. Its serpentine walls are composed of enormous limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. Each stone was shaped individually to interlock with its neighbors, an approach so effective that, despite centuries of earthquakes, the walls have barely shifted. Living at this altitude required more than adaptation. It required mastery. The Inca didn't merely endure the mountains, they organized an empire across them. Their cities weren't imposed on the land, but were carved from it, shaped with reverence, engineering insight, and imperial ambition. Every terrace, staircase, and plaza formed a system, one that made altitude an advantage, not an obstacle. Long before satellites or telescopes, the sky was the oldest calendar, and ancient American civilizations read it with astonishing precision. Their cities weren't just engineered for function or defense. They were observatories in stone, designed to track time, celebrate myth, and align human life with celestial rhythms. Among the Maya, structures known as E-groups, like those at Huaxactun and Cibal, were built to mark the sun's position on solstices and equinoxes. A viewer standing at a central platform could watch the sun rise directly over specific temples, signaling key dates in the agricultural and ceremonial calendar. At Chichen Itza, that relationship between sky and structure becomes something visual, even theatrical. The pyramid known as El Castillo was designed so that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a snake-like shadow along its stairway. The shadows slither downward until they connect with sculpted serpent heads at the base, bringing the myth of the feathered serpent Kukulkan to life in light and shadow twice a year. The Inca were no less attuned to the sky. Their cities featured Intihuatana stones, ritual objects that likely functioned as solar clocks. At Machu Picchu, these stones aligned with solstices, allowing priests to track time, plan planting seasons, and stage state rituals tied to the movement of the sun. Even the Aztec calendar stone, often mistaken for decorative art, encodes an intricate understanding of time cycles, deities, and cosmic eras, making it both a mythic narrative and a mathematical device. These cultures built not only in space, but in time. They read the sky like a manuscript and built their cities to mirror what they saw in the stars. Their cities moved in harmony with the cosmos, offering structure not just to walls and roads, but to life itself. In today's world of artificial timekeeping, their designs remind us what it meant to build in sync with the sky. We often treat ancient cities as curiosities, ruins to admire, maybe even marvel at, but rarely as models. Yet the more we uncover about the civilizations of ancient America, the clearer it becomes. Their choices still matter. Their cities weren't just about survival, they were about sustainability, meaning, and balance. Things we're urgently trying to rediscover today. Take water, In drought-prone deserts, flooded jungles, and thin-aired highlands, people developed systems to harvest, store, and distribute water in ways that respected local conditions. Raised fields, stone-lined canals, reservoirs, and flood-controlled dikes turned unpredictable climates into habitable terrain without disrupting ecosystems the way many modern developments do. Urban design reflected values beyond efficiency. Cities like Teotihuacan and Cusco were laid out with cosmology in mind. Public spaces mirrored mythic structures. Alignments followed solar paths. This wasn't superstition. It was about grounding civic life in something larger than commerce or convenience. Food production, too, was integrated into urban space. Chinampas, floating gardens built in shallow lakes, offered continuous crop cycles and natural irrigation. In the Andes, terracing prevented erosion and maximized growing space on steep slopes. These systems were productive and regenerative, not extractive. Most remarkably, these cities endured. They were built for climate extremes, social rituals, and generational continuity, not short-term gain. In today's world of overbuilt sprawl, crumbling infrastructure, and rising environmental pressure, the ancient cities of the Americas offer something we desperately need: proof that it's possible to build places that last, nourish, and inspire. Their achievements weren't just technical, they were also moral, rooted in relationships, not just resources. Cities weren't separate from nature, they were woven into it. The past isn't only behind us. In some ways, it's ahead, waiting for us to catch up. Across the highlands, jungles, and deserts of the Americas, ancient cities rose with extraordinary vision, carefully planned, deeply symbolic, and brilliantly engineered. They weren't primitive or peripheral. They were central to how millions of people lived, worshipped, traded, and governed. But these cities were more than just functional. They connected earth and sky, myth and measurement, power and purpose. They worked with nature, not against it. And when challenges came, climate shifts, political upheavals, invasions, they didn't vanish. They were overgrown, erased from records, or absorbed into new cultures. But they were never truly lost. Only the maps forgot them. The land, the stars, and the stones remembered. Today, through satellite imagery, LiDAR, and the voices of descendant communities, we're beginning to see the scale of what was hidden. Not just impressive architecture, but entire worldviews encoded in stone. And as promised, here's the detail that still stuns archaeologists. In the rainforests of Guatemala, a city once served as the beating heart of the Maya world. It was called El Mirador. For centuries, it lay invisible beneath thick jungle, mistaken for hills and ridges. But when LiDAR scanned the forest, it revealed something extraordinary. A city covering an area larger than Manhattan, with massive causeways, reservoirs, housing clusters, and one of the largest pyramids by volume in the world. El Mirador rewrote our assumptions about when and how Maya civilization began. Its rediscovery doesn't just change maps, it changes how we think about the past, and how much of it still waits to be seen. The ancient cities of the Americas were never forgotten by the land, only by us. And now, one scan, one question, one open mind at a time, we're remembering. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the hidden cities of ancient America. If you found this exploration meaningful, we invite you to support Armchair Archaeology by giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. It helps us bring more forgotten histories back into view. Make sure to tap the notification bell so you don't miss our next expedition into the past. Now it's your turn. What ancient cultures, ruins, or mysteries would you like us to uncover next? Leave your suggestions in the comments. We read every one. Until our next discovery, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the flame of curiosity burning bright.